This lesson is a continuation in the book of Exodus of God's instructions to Moses on the building of the tabernacle, the furnishings, the inside hangings, outside hangings, and then today, chapter 27 in this lesson discusses at the beginning the courtyard outside the tabernacle. And thou shalt make an altar of shittim wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits broad, and the altar shall be 4 square, and the height thereof shall be 3 cubits. This altar is going to be where the burnt offerings were sacrificed. It is approximately a 7.5 foot square, and it would have been 4 1/2 feet high. 2. And thou shalt make the horns of it upon the 4 corners thereof. His horns shall be of the same, and thou shalt overlay it with brass. 4 horns on either corner, the same exact size, and overlaid with brass. Notice that the altar is being referred to as a masculine gender. 3. And thou shalt make his pans to receive his ashes, and his shovels, and his basins, and his flesh hooks, and his fire pans. All vessels thereof shalt thou make of brass. The would have been pots here to put ashes in, shovels to scoop, and for the throwing of blood. Flesh hooks, of course, would have moved the sacrifice, and the fire pans would have been for laying down the hot instruments in the sacrifice ordinance. 4. And thou shalt make for it a grate of a network of brass, and upon the net shalt thou make 4 brazen rings in the 4 corners thereof. In other words, a brass net would have been there, and then the 4 rings, of course, would have been used when they needed to move this altar. 5. And thou shalt put it under the compass of the altar beneath, that the net may be even to the midst of the altar. This net would have been about halfway up the altar, probably about a little bit over 2 feet up from the ground. 6. And thou shalt make staves for the altar, staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with brass. And of course, the overlaid staves would have been used in the movement of the altar when they broke camp. 7. And the staves shall be put into the rings, and the staves shall be upon the 2 edges of the altar to bear it into the rings, so that it could be carried on the shoulders of those who were in charge of moving the altar when they broke camp and moved. 8. Hollow with boards shalt thou make it, as it was showed thee in the mount, so shall they make it. And God here is referring to the fact that he did show Moses illustrations as to how to make this construction. 9. And thou shalt make the court of the tabernacle for the south side. Southward there shall be hangings for the court of fine twined linen of 100 cubits long for one side. So it would have been 150 feet long on the north and the south side. 10. And the 20 pillars thereof and their 20 sockets shall be of brass, and the hooks of the pillars and their fillets shall be of silver. The fillets would have been a way to fasten they would have been binding rings to hold it together, and there would have been 20 upright pillars. 11. Likewise for the north side, in the length there shall be hangings of 100 cubits long, and his 20 pillars, and their 20 sockets of brass, the hooks of the pillars, and their fillets of silver. North and south side would have been exactly alike, 150 feet long. 12. And for the breadth of the court on the west side shall be hangings of the 50 cubits, their pillars 10, and their sockets 10, half the size of the long side, which would mean the east and west sides are going to be 75 feet. And the breadth of the court on the east side eastward shall be 50 cubits. 14. The hangings of one side of the gate shall be 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. So they're going to be gates there, curtains that would form entrances. And on the other side shall be hangings 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3, openings on the short sides of the tabernacle or the court. 16. And the gate for the court shall be a hanging of 20 cubits of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen, wrought with needlework, and their pillars shall be 4, and their sockets 4. So this gate, these openings would have been 30 feet, and they would have been secured with the same kinds of sockets, and they would have, of course, been heavily embroidered of linen. 19. And the vessels of the tabernacle in all of the service thereof, and all the pins thereof, and all the pins of the court shall be of brass. Everything will be made of brass except those things that he ordered to be silver or gold. 20. And thou shalt command the children of Israel that they bring thee pure olive beaten for the light, so to cause the lamp to burn always. The children are to bring olive oil that has been beaten out to burn in these lamps and to provide a constant light. 21. In the tabernacle of the congregation without the veil, that's not the Holy of Holies, but the other side, which is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons shall order it from evening to morning before the Lord, and it shall be a statute forever unto the generations on the behalf of the children of Israel. They are to go in there every morning and to order the tabernacle. Chapter 28 takes up the vestments of those who serve in the tabernacle, and the first, of course, will cover the clothing for the high priest, which will be Aaron. Chapter 28, verse 1. And take thou unto thee Aaron thy brother, and his sons with him from among the children of Israel, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office, even Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, Aaron's sons. So Aaron and his 4 sons will be serving in this tabernacle. 3. And thou shalt speak unto all that are wise-hearted, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, that they may make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. These will be the garments of Aaron. 4. And these are the garments which they shall make: a breastplate, and an ephod. An ephod is like an apron, and a robe, and a broidered coat, a mitre, and a girdle, that they shall make holy garments for Aaron thy brother and his sons, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. And that's going to be an apron-like garment, the ephod. There will be a robe, there will be a breastplate, and there will be a girdle or a kind of a sash, and there will be a turban or a head covering. And the Lord will give Moses complete description of how to make each part of this richly jewel encrusted and garments made of the finest fabrics. 5. And they shall take gold and blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen. 6. And they shall make the ephod of gold, of blue, and of purple, of scarlet, and fine twined linen with cunning work. It would have been very beautifully, heavily embroidered, and as God said, He had imbued persons with the necessary wisdom and talent to do this handiwork. 7. It shall have the 2 shoulder pieces thereof joined at the 2 edges thereof, and so it shall be joined together. So in other words, will be joined at the shoulders. 8. And the curious girdle of the ephod, which is upon it, shall be of the same according to the work thereof, even of gold and blue, purple and scarlet, and fine linen. That would be the sash. 9. And thou shalt take 2 onyx stones, and grave on them the names of the children of Israel. 10. 6 of their names on one stone, and the other 6 names on the rest on the other stone, according to their birth. They will go in birth order: 6 on one onyx stone to hold on one shoulder, and 6 on the other. 11. With the work of an engraver in stone, like the engravings of a signet, thou shalt engrave the 2 stones with the names of the children of Israel, and shall make them to be set in ounces of gold. So they would have been engraved much as the way a signet ring would have an initial or a design carved into it. This stone will be engraved with those 12 names, and that would have been intricate and difficult work, and the stones would not have been small. And of course, 11, with the work of an engraver, they engraved the stones, and to finish that verse, thou shalt make them to be set in ounces of gold. These stones will be mounted into gold. 12. And thou shalt put the 2 stones upon the shoulders of the ephod for stones for a memorial unto the children of Israel. And Aaron shall bear their names before the Lord upon his shoulders for a memorial. In other words, when Aaron goes into the Holy of Holies and into the outer part of the tabernacle, he will be representing, approaching God for these peoples of these 12 tribes. 13. And thou shalt make ounces of gold, and 2 chains of pure gold at the ends of wreathed work shalt thou make them, and fasten the wreathed chains to the ounces. Wire, gold wire made into chains. 14. And the 2 chains of pure gold at the ends of the wreathed work shalt thou make them, and fasten the wreathed chains to the ounces. We did that verse 15. And thou shalt make the breastplate of judgment with cunning work. Again, beautiful embroidery. After the work of the ephod, thou shalt make it of gold, of blue, and of purple, and of scarlet, and of fine twined linen. 4 square it shall be, being doubled, will be in a square. A span shall be the length thereof, and a span shall be the breadth. So it's going to be about a 9-inch square, this breastplate. 17. And thou shalt set in it settings of stones, even 4 rows of stones. The first row, these are going to be 4 rows of 3, representing the 12 tribes. The first row shall be a sardius, a topaz, and a carbuncle. 18. And the second row shall be an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond. 19. And the third row, a ligure, an agate, and an amethyst. 20. And the fourth row, a beryl, and an onyx, and a jasper. And they shall be set in gold in their enclosings. 21. And the stones shall be with the names of the children of Israel, 12 according to their names, like the engravings of a signet. Every one with his name shall they be, according to the 12 tribes. So we have 4 rows of 3, 12 stones. Each one of the stones will bear the name of one of the 12 tribes. 22. And thou shalt make upon the breastplate chains at the ends of wreathed work of pure gold. Again, gold wire woven into chains. 23. And thou shalt make upon the breastplate 2 rings of gold, and shalt put the 2 rings on the 2 ends of the breastplate on the bottom. And thou shalt put the 2 wreathed chains of gold in the 2 rings which are on the ends of the breastplate. 25. And the other 2 ends of the 2 wreathed chains thou shalt fasten in the 2 ounces, and put them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod before it. So they're going to be attached in 2 places to these stones on the ephod. And the other 2 ends of the 2 wreathed chains thou shalt fasten on the 2 ounces, and put them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod before it. 26. And thou shalt make 2 rings of gold, and thou shalt put them upon the 2 ends of the breastplate in the border thereof, which is in the side of the ephod inward. 27. And the 2 other rings of gold shalt thou make, and shalt put them on the 2 sides of the ephod underneath, toward the forepart thereof, over against the other coupling thereof, above the curious girdle of the ephod. So this ephod, this breastplate, is going to have 4 golden rings with chains. 28. And thou shalt bind the breastplate by the rings thereof unto the rings of the ephod with a lace of blue, that it may be above the curious girdle of the ephod, and that the breastplate be not loosed from the ephod. So this at the bottom would have been this blue lacing, likely would have gone behind the priest's back and would have attached to the ephod in 2 places. 20. And Aaron shall bear the names of the children of Israel in the breastplate of judgment upon his heart, when he goeth into the holy place for a memorial before the Lord continually. He will have them on the breastplate engraved physically, that he is to have, when he goes before the Lord, the names of all these in his heart. 30. And thou shalt put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim, and they shall be upon Aaron's heart when he goeth in before the Lord. And the Urim and the Thummim, we're unsure as to what exactly those are. They are used in judgment. Josephus thought or wrote that the 2 stones on the shoulders would be either cloudy or clear, showing God's approval or disapproval for something that was requested. So Urim and Thummim is used in judgment. 31. And thou shalt make the robe of the ephod all of blue. Now this is going to be the same kind of blue robe that Jesus wore. 32. And there shall be a hole in the top of it, and in the midst thereof it shall have a binding of woven work round about the whole of it, as it were the whole of a habergeon, that it be not rent. In other words, it's going to be bound at the top around that neck hole, and this would be a seamless robe, which would mean it would almost have to be knit, not to have a seam. 33. And beneath the hem of it thou shalt make pomegranates of blue and purple and of scarlet round about the hem thereof, and bells of gold between them round about. So around the bottom of this robe would have been fringe in the shape of pomegranates, and Jesus' robe had fringe. It was that fringe that the woman with the issue of blood touched, and priest in his day would have worn a robe with fringe. Now the high priests, there were bells, and even in Jesus' day, the high priest had tinkling bells on the edge of the garment, and that was for the reason that only the high priest was allowed into the Holy of Holies, and that was one day a year on the Day of Atonement during the Feast of Tabernacles. And the tinkling of the bells let those serving in the tabernacle or later the temple to know that the priest was alive. And I think that there was some kind of way, an attachment to the priest when he went in on that day. And if they ceased to hear those bells, they could retrieve him from behind that veil without themselves going in it, as they were not allowed in it. 35. And it shall be upon Aaron to minister, and his sound shall be heard when he goeth into the holy place before the Lord, and he cometh out, that he die not. And again, that reason for wearing the bell, if he should go in there and die, that they could get him out, and they could tell that he was alive and well as long as those bells sounded. 36. And thou shalt make a plate of pure gold, and grave upon it like the engravings of a signet, holiness to the Lord. And thou shalt put it on a blue lace, that it may be upon the mitre. This is upon the turban or the headdress. Upon the forefront of the mitre it shall be. Now, if you know anything about lace making, you know that it is a fine craft and a slow craft made with a very small little tat making device. 38. And it shall be upon Aaron's forehead, that Aaron may bear the iniquity of the holy things which the children of Israel shall hallow in all their holy gifts, and it shall be always upon his forehead, that they may be accepted before God. So he is always to wear this holiness to God, to the Lord, upon his forehead. And thou shalt embroider the coat of fine linen, and thou shalt make the mitre of fine linen, and thou shalt make the girdle of needlework. So the outer garment and the turban or headdress would have been of linen, and then that sash, that called a girdle. A girdle was used to gird up one's robe, to take that sash and pull a robe up and tie it and make a robe into a pair of pants. The common garment of the day. This is the end of the priestly garment for Aaron, who will be acting as the high priest, and the rest of the chapter has to do with costuming, or the vestments for his sons, the 4 sons. And for Aaron's sons thou shalt make coats, and thou shalt make for them girdles, and bonnets shall thou make for them for glory and for beauty. So their very clothing is to the glory of God. 41. And thou shalt put them upon Aaron thy brother and his sons with him, and thou shalt anoint them and consecrate them and sanctify them, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office. So Moses is to anoint his brother and his nephews, and to sanctify them through the anointing, making them ready to serve as priests. And thou shalt make them linen breeches to cover their nakedness from the loins even unto the thighs, that they shall reach. So they will have an undergarment. 43. And they shall be upon Aaron and upon his sons when they come in unto the tabernacle of the congregation, or when they come near unto the altar to minister in the holy place, that they bear not iniquity and die. It shall be a statute forever unto him and his seed after him. This ends the chapter, and it stops with the fact that priests are to be descendants of Aaron. And by the time we get to Jesus' day, we find that persons who are offspring of Cain and who in the time of Jesus we had high priests who were descendants of Esau, who had been appointed by the Roman government and had no business at all serving in that office. I would tell you that many teachers who teach Exodus chapter by chapter and verse by verse will show you a picture and leave out these verses, these chapters 25 through 32 about the tabernacle and the altar and the furnishings of the altar and the courtyard and the dress for the priests and so forth. It is difficult to grasp in many ways, but I think it is important to go through this as best we can to understand the measurements and the kinds of materials that were used. They were the best. So don't criticize your preacher for wearing an Armani suit. This video has been a voluntary outreach of the Essex United Methodist Church in Essex, Missouri.